And now, the Shazam ISIS Hour, Part 2, ISIS.
"O my queen," said the royal sorcerer to Hatshepsut, "with this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements. You will soar as the falcon soars, run with the speed of gazelles, and command the elements of sky and earth." 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Cindy Lee, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
You have all the powers? Not all. You saved him before. I pulled him from the ocean. No one has the power of life and death.
Welcome back, everyone, to an all-new episode of the Shazam ISIS podcast. It's your old mentor, John S. Drew here, and we're continuing our journey down the highways and byways of the land, discussing those two iconic television shows of Saturday morning television in the 70s, Shazam and The Secrets of Isis. And joining me once again in the RV is the big red cheese himself, Mr. Richard F. Lee. Hey, Richard.
Well, hello, Dr. John. As a doctor, you are a veterinarian, aren't you?
Yes. I have been known to treat some stubborn mules.
Oh, boom, boom. Oh, dear. Ooh, good comeback. Oh, boy. So how are things going with the Professor John Drew?
Well, they've been going pretty well. I mean, I just finished reading the very first issue of the Mighty Isis comic book. It wasn't Secrets of Isis, it was the Mighty Isis. And it's interesting because the cover proclaims TV's top heroine battles her deadliest foe. Now, I would think DC would be promoting TV's top heroine, considering it was the end of 76, as Wonder Woman. You would think.
Yeah, you would think. Now, when did Wonder Woman with Linda Carter premiere? Did that premiere a little later than The Secrets of Isis?
Oh, it was definitely a little later than The Secrets of Isis. The first episode of Wonder Woman aired November 7th, 1975. And it was 76 that the TV show, the weekly TV show proper, started. In fact, episodes of Wonder Woman often replaced episodes of The Bionic Woman while Lindsay Wagner was recovering from a car accident.
But what else?
We've got DC Comics here at the end of 1976 proclaiming Isis TV's top heroine.
Exactly. That's my point. Why would they label Isis TV's top heroine? Why would they do that?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever even just put Wonder Woman in that same, a DC TV comic. I don't know if they even bothered with that with her comic book during that time.
No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, I don't think they did that when they said this is a DC TV comic on the front. I could be wrong about that because I was a big DC fan. I was more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan at the time. Right. I converted over to Marvel much later, but at the time, I was mindful of the scroll or the tab they put on the cover. And when they told you it was a DC TV comic, they did at the very top. And they had that for Shazam, Isis, and Welcome Back Kotter of all franchises.
Welcome Back Kotter and the Super Friends.
And the Super Friends, that's right, Super Friends.
Yeah.
Whenever DC had a television series tie-in of some type, they would do that to sell more comics, obviously.
But not Wonder Woman.
Not Wonder Woman. Was it because Wonder Woman was so popular that they didn't need to sell that?
I don't know, because Marvel certainly capitalized. Even Spider-Man, they were like now in his own smash TV show. The Hulk, and I mean, the comic book was so different from Kenny Johnson's TV show. I mean, other than the fact that you had a guy named Banner who turned into a rampaging monster.
Right, exactly. It is strange because now you bring up the whole subject of Isis being the top TV star, or for the comic rather, the comic saying that she's TV's top action heroine star. Joanna Cameron said to me one time when we were speaking, she said to me that she thought that Isis could be better, that it would have been better as a primetime show, but Linda Carter's Wonder Woman stole that thunder. She had faith in the secrets of Isis. She really liked the character a lot.
But it's funny because, here's this comic book, and right off the bat, like I said in the last episode, she's fighting a superpowered being. I mean, mind you, it's still linked in with Egypt and such. She's fighting Scarab, the man who would destroy an Egyptian magician who had been imprisoned in a pyramid that he manages to escape from.
Yeah, and he's standing on top of a 747 on the wing.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a very strange image. That it's almost like the episode in the Twilight Zone where you see that monster on the wing of the plane. But here you've got this character who can't exist in real life at all, standing on a wing of a plane, and Isis is confronting him. This is a supernatural-inspired villain. Obviously, the comic detracted from the format of the television series and went in an entirely different direction. The comic was true escapism, whereas The Secrets of Isis, the show, was tied more into real-life issues, John.
Well, it was tied into real-life issues, but also Isis was the only supernatural element. Everybody else was normal. And they reacted to Isis, whereas now Isis is reacting to other stimuli, other supernatural elements.
Yeah, absolutely right. In the comics, you have to create a villain of some kind, an antagonist who is almost, but maybe not quite equal to your heroine.
Right.
And all of the superheroes in DC's lineup, like Marvel too, they all had to have their villains. In a TV show like The Secrets of Isis, you couldn't have villains, which that's the one thing that I didn't like about either Shazam and Isis. There were no villains who could fight our hero. And that's unfortunate because in primetime television, you could have bad guys, real bad guys, who could fight your star week to week, and your star would always win. That's the one drawback. That I love Shazam and Isis, and we do this podcast all the time, but that's the one drawback to these shows that really irks me. There were no good villains that Isis and Captain Marvel could fight from week to week.
You want to know something, though? I think if the show had gone on, they would have eventually had to give in to that and possibly introduce that element, because you could only keep doing the same routine. Even if you changed it up with having Isis make 2 appearances or Marvel make 2, eventually you were going to have to do something that took it a step beyond. I mean, that's what happens with all these TV shows. $6 Million Man. The moment Bigfoot was in there, all bets were off, and now he's fighting Bigfoot. He's fighting a super tank. It was going to happen. It would have had to have happened had the show gone beyond 2 seasons for Isis and 3 seasons for Shazam, I think.
Yes, I think they would have had to do that as well. Now, I'm thinking about, remember The Flash, which John Wesley Shipp. I liked that one season of The Flash. I thought it was a quality television show.
Yep.
I liked the costume. I liked the pacing. I liked the characters, the ensemble of actors who were on that show. The costume was reminiscent. It somewhat matched the appearance and the physicality of the Michael Keaton Batman costume from the Tim Burton film. That was the look, the molded muscles they were going for, but it wasn't the costume that drove the show. It was the action and the interaction with Barry Allen, John Wesley Shipp's version of Barry Allen, and being the Flash, going up against a growing set of antagonists. And eventually Mark Hamill would appear as one of the villains drawn from the DC comic, and that was a good idea. They had to do something like what you said, but they did it within one season. They did not have to wait for a second and third season. Of course, the show would be canceled after only one season, and there would not have been an opportunity to do that in future seasons. With Shazam and ISIS, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't take some risk in putting a real bad guy in these shows. And I think it was because of the child psychologist that they have credited at the end of the credits of each episode, saying, oh, no, you don't want to do that. We want to give them some practical thing, some good moral, and we don't want to give them blind action with some villain out there. I thought that was a mistake. I think they should have let them do that.
Well, as later on in other shows like He-Man and such, He-Man would fight supernatural beings and such, and at the end he'd still come along and deliver the moral of the day. So, I mean, they were able to do that. It was eventually, and you're right. I think it was a misstep. It would have been nice to have seen, not necessarily every episode, but every once in a while, having a bit more of a threat, having a bit more of a challenge for the two characters in their respective series.
Yes. Like we concluded on the last episode of the podcast, we talked about how Captain Marvel and ISIS teamed up, and their supervillain was none other than a forest fire. And we're going to see in the future reviews of Shazam and ISIS where there are going to be other crossovers with both of those characters, and they're going to actually fight not quite the caliber of a supervillain, John, but they are going to be fighting bad guys in the future, more realistic, down-to-earth bad guys, criminals, common thieves, but they are going to be fighting a human villain. And unfortunately, in this particular episode, it's not a human villain that they're fighting, but the specter of the Grim Reaper. Right, John?
Right. Now, before we just get into that episode, just two quick things I also want to point out about the comic book is, once again, the origin is given once again in another 2-page splash in this story, just like it was in the Shazam issue. It's sort of a recap again, just in case, I guess, you didn't pick up the Shazam issue. You're picking up ISIS for the first time. And there is a sort of moral at the end. It's not Andrea or ISIS coming out and saying it, but sort of everybody gathered together, including Dr. Barnes, and talking about how important it is that knowledge is power.
Yes.
Nice touch.
And it's amazing how these comics, I'm wondering, though, the reason why they must have broken away from the formula that was established in already one season of ISIS, Secrets of ISIS under their belt, that the odd timing of DC to go to a comic, a monthly or bi-monthly comic for ISIS, the mighty ISIS, is that you had an established character, they had permission from Filmation to do this in comic form, but to try to turn her into Wonder Woman maybe, or to try to turn her into a female version of Marvel's Doctor Strange, they wanted to do something completely different from the series.
Well, think about this. There's a certain irony in that as well, because here was Shazam, Captain Marvel, and the show bears very little resemblance to the comic book. Then you turn around and DC gets the rights to ISIS, and what do? They start creating this thing where, after a fashion, it doesn't have the same... I mean, yeah, it's got Rick, it's got Cindy Lee, it's even got Dr. Barnes, who, by the way, in a couple of issues, he's white. But
yeah. What how did he turn white? This is before Michael Jackson's music video. Was the black and white? What was that about?
But do you see what I'm saying? There's an irony there. DC turns around and instead of doing an adaptation of the ISIS TV show, they instead start giving us their take on it. And Filmation did the same thing with Captain Marvel. Instead of adapting the actual Captain Marvel and having the characters, because Lou didn't want to pay out for all the rights, we instead get their interpretation of Captain Marvel.
Yes, you're correct. We get their interpretation of Captain Marvel. But, thinking about it, this is the reverse. DC gets the license from Filmation to do a comic version.
Right.
And so it's their interpretation of ISIS in a whole new universe, keeping some of the elements from the TV show, like you say, and going off in a direction that budget and standards and practices and child psychologists would not let you do.
Right.
So, in a way, I kind of like that thought. DC goes off in a strange direction with ISIS.
Oh, they did.
It would have been very odd, but it didn't sell. It did not last but 8 issues.
Right. Right.
And that's unfortunate, because what would have been like if the Mighty ISIS comic would have had a stronger following and be able to thrive, and it didn't thrive. Now, today, DC does have their own version of ISIS. It's a revamped, redone version of ISIS where they carry the similar name of Andrea Thomas, and that's just a strange twist on it. And ISIS is dating Black Adam.
Ooh.
Now, go figure this. ISIS is the epitome of morality and virtue. She's dating a bad boy. Oh. Poor Captain Marvel can never get a break, John.
Oh, Sandy in Greece. She also liked Tony Zuko there.
Exactly. Exactly. Sandy in Greece. Exactly. So why is it that poor Captain Marvel can't get a break where he can't get a date with ISIS, but ISIS goes off and dates a 4,000-year-old evil Egyptian wizard? Ugh.
Well, if it's, Dwayne Johnson, I don't think ISIS is going to complain.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's see what they... Let's get into this episode. It's called Lucky. Now, it's the 7th episode of the series. The production number is 820011. It was written by Ann Udell, and I think this is her first time writing for the show. It was directed by Hollingsworth Morse. Now, the episode aired first on October 18th, 1975. The shooting for it began on August 18th, 1975. So we're talking about 2 months turnover. That seems to be fairly consistent for all these episodes from, first shooting to air date.
Yes, very consistent, very fast.
Yeah.
It's really good. When you think about it, I think of an episode of ISIS and Shazam like mini filmmaking, and it truly is. This isn't just episodic television. They were making little films. They were using 16-millimeter film, and even though the quality is not as visually good as what we have today, HD and all of that business, they were dealing with old-fashioned, gritty filmmaking when you think about it. Mm-hmm. They had to cut. They had to clear the gate when you're on a set of a movie with film cameras and checking to make sure dust and debris don't get into the lens. This was mini filmmaking, and they were doing it very fast, very quick, 2 episodes a week, and they had to take the shot footage down to the lab and develop it. I mean, you could not have instant playback in those days. You had to remember where your marks were from the prior scene. And they would put in the special effects, the sound effects, and if necessary, some looping by the actors. If something went wrong and the film ended up not looking right or didn't turn out or was ruined in some way, they had to go back and reshoot. And Jackson had told us that there were some scenes ruined in an episode of Shazam, I think it was The Athlete, that had to be reshot. So what you just said, this was filmed, or shooting began on August 18th, 1975, and it aired October 18th, only 2 months later. They were doing this consistently. These folks were real pros. And no doubt, many of them began on a children's show like ISIS and would graduate on to bigger projects that would command their talents.
So, who have we got in this episode in terms of guests?
Well, in terms of guests, this is a fairly decent cast here we have of guest talent. The actor Johnny Durand as Randy Martin. Duran was discovered by a talent scout while performing George M. Cohan songs with his younger brother in the back room of P.J. Clark's in New York City. Got that from IMDb. Now, George M. Cohan, I digress, was a famous songwriter that our friends out in podcast land need to check out. He was a famous songwriter and playwright who wrote I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, and there was a movie made about the life of George M. Cohan called Yankee Doodle Dandy that my great-uncle James Wong Howe was the cinematographer for. So all of this converges together. You got this actor who was discovered by a talent scout performing George Cohan songs. It's hard to separate really acting and singing and dancing. All this, the entertainment that we enjoy on the screen, converges at some point. And here he gets to be a guest actor on this episode of ISIS. There's also another actor named Brian Nash. He plays the character Glenn. He also appeared on Bewitched, another popular 60s and 70s show. There's another actor named Robert Forward as Dr. Herb Rogers. Now, Dr. Herb Rogers, he'll have only one brief scene in this episode. It won't be very long. Now, there's something that's interesting about this episode, as we're going to get into it. This episode parallels the Filmation Star Trek animated series episode Yesteryear, which dealt with the death of Spock's pet Selah when he was a child. Now, that episode aired earlier in September of 1973, September 15th of 1973, about 2 years earlier. So dealing with the sensitive subject matter of a pet dying or issues of death was not new to Filmation, John. They did it before.
Well, that's one thing, got to give Filmation always credit for, was that they were willing to tackle, even subjects like this, like death and such. And in both cases, Yesteryear is an excellent episode of the animated series. And as we're going to find out, this is a really good episode of ISIS. So
yes, it is.
Yeah. So we get into the opening. We have our young man, Randy. He's walking his dog, Lucky, when he runs into Rick. And in their discussion, we learn that Randy is in the 8th grade. And I like this. It's really cool the way they set this up because, Randy and his brother now is in college, and Randy had gone to the high school, and, not Randy, I'm sorry, but the brother had gone to the high school, and now Randy's getting ready to go as well. And Rick's really impressed with how Randy has trained Lucky to be, he's a pretty obedient dog.
Yeah, he's a very obedient dog. Where's the leash?
He doesn't need one.
Doesn't need a leash, but it's 1975. They didn't have leash laws back in those days.
Right.
Here we're at a high school. When I was in 8th grade, I never touched a high school campus. I did not want to be in school when I was in 8th grade looking forward to going to high school. I didn't know what a high school was. And so they're bringing Randy and establishing him. He's with his pet dog, and he's going to the campus of a high school. And he wants apparently to follow in his brother's footsteps, perhaps?
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing here. It's sort of that whole, your brother was a big man on campus and stuff, and we're looking forward to seeing you. They'd probably known Randy for a while, because if Rick and Andrea taught the brother beforehand and maybe saw Randy at other events when he was younger, when he was, 5th, 6th grade, and now he's moving up. I have the same thing with my kids at school. I'll have someone who is a junior, and they'll bring their kid to the open house. They'll bring their brother or sister to the open house that we hold in October, and I get introduced to them, or I'll see them at plays or something like that. And then next thing you know, they're sitting in my class a few years later.
Yes, and that's a good thing. Yeah. I got to tell you, I never wanted to follow in the footsteps of anybody when I was young. Again, another digression. I'm just a weird podcast co-host. Never mind me. I never wanted to follow in anybody's steps. But we see just in the next scene, this happens probably just a few minutes later, Lucky waits while Randy goes to meet with Miss Thomas.
Yep.
Now, Randy says he wants to be a veterinarian. So he's a pretty smart, precocious 8th grader. I think that when I was in 8th grade, I didn't have plans to be anything great. And it really turned out to be that way, as it turns out. But he wants to be a veterinarian. He has plans. And a lot of young folks don't make plans like that at that age. So as they're talking, it's established that his dog, Lucky, is 10 years old.
Lucky! Come on, boy! Come on! Come here, Lucky! Come on, let's race! Lucky, come on! Come on, Lucky! Come on, boy! Come on!
He won't go. He always stays where I tell him to. Come on, Lucky.
You know, Cindy Lee has these magical powers.
Come on.
He's a one-man dog, Cindy.
I'm glad he's a one-team dog. You know, since he's been our mascot, we've won every game.
Well, you don't think we're winning because of the dog?
Maybe not. But whatever it is, it's working. I just hope it holds out for the big game with Central.
Yeah, they say they're gonna beat us.
That's what they think. But they'll find out.
Thanks, Miss Thomas. I'll see you at the beach party. Come on, Lucky. See you there. I'll be there. We'll both be there. Come on.
She seems to know every new student who comes on campus. Now she even knows the dog and where he's been. And the only thing is that the dog won't respond to Cindy at all.
Right.
So the dog, I think, is pretty smart. He's saying, Cindy, I know where you've been. You've been around with every young student around, and I don't want you knowing my secrets. Does this beach, and I'm looking at the video as we're doing this review, I'm watching the episode right now as we speak. Does this beach remind you of Dum Dum Dum, where Billy and Mentor were fishing in the last episode, The Odd Couple on Shazam?
Not myself. I didn't really pay that much attention to the beach. I was all excited thinking I'm going to see Andrea and maybe Cindy Lee in bikinis.
Hey, look, a plane almost crashed at this beach. Captain Marvel, the inflatable Captain Marvel on the plane. And so there's a lot of things that can happen on this strange beach. Now, doggone it, I've seen this episode. Andrea and Cindy are not wearing bikinis. What is wrong with you people out there? The producers. Come on, don't you understand that we 8-year-olds are about to go through puberty and we want to see what the opposite sex looks like? Give us kids something to think about.
Exactly, yeah. But it is a fun afternoon, and the kids even from the rival high school, Central, show up. But it's a friendly rivalry that they've all got going on. And one of them goes and tosses a ball, which Lucky chases after, and he runs into the water. And then Randy goes after Lucky into the water. And the two are then stuck in the undertow.
It's Randy!
Must be caught in the undertow. Come on.
By the ice.
Why didn't she just cast a spell to lift them both out? Why did she run into the water?
Oh, because we wouldn't have a cool episode to comment on the cycle of life.
Again!
No, wait, stop. I'll do it.
Run! It's Isis!
This way, buddy!
But you could have still done that. You could have even had bad blue screen, and it would have just saved time and maybe even have been a little cooler than, because she's, and mind you, this is a real stunt. That's Joanna Cameron doing all the swimming there. That I don't see a stunt double at any time in that.
Yeah, I don't either. No, I think Joanna Cameron did have a stunt double, not necessarily for this episode, but
right.
They had to use a stunt double before because there's a dangerous scene in another episode where she goes underwater.
She's got him!
And it clearly is not Joanna Cameron. I don't think it is. Then again, you never know. They were on a tight budget, but you're going to see some very bad blue screen in season 3 of ISIS, where Captain Marvel and ISIS team up again. Okay,
yeah,
we're going to see lots of very bad blue screen at this point. So here we are, and she goes after them to rescue the dog and to rescue Randy.
Yeah, but she saves Randy first.
Yeah. Forget the kid. Get the dog first. If you know anything about movies and television, humans die. Dogs don't. Okay? I don't give a flying rip what happens to a human being. Rescue the dog. Okay? I think that movie producers instinctively know you don't hurt pets on screen. Now here, you have to do it for the purposes of establishing what the story is about. I certainly get that. But she doesn't say things like, "Oh, waters that would swirl around, come out of the lungs so this pooch won't drown." I think that would have been a cool rhyme, John.
Yeah.
Will he be all right? I don't know. I'll get him when he's best. Good boy, Lucky. She'll get him there in a hurry. I know, but I kind of like to be there. My car's here. Get your things and I'll take you.
Randy, I didn't mean to.
It's okay. It's not your fault.
I know, but if anything happens to Lucky...
Nothing's gonna happen to Lucky. Dr. Rogers will fix him up. I know he will.
Now, I wonder if Isis had to look up those rhymes and commit to the memory, or does she make them up? Now, if she makes them up improv, that is some talented acting. Oh, jeez. I would have rescued the dog and left the kid to fend for himself. I'm sorry. I hate to sound that way, but look, humans can rescue themselves pretty good. Dogs can't. Go rescue the dog first, but whatever. That's her choice to make. She goes out there, and she gets the dog out. Now, the next scene, we see that she's at the Rogers Pet Hospital. She takes in the dog, and the vet says he will do what he can. Now, I know this is supposed to be serious. It's supposed to set up some drama. It's supposed to set up something sad. But that dog sure looks quite awake to me, John.
Yeah.
He looks like he would be just fine. Give him a milk bone.
Yeah. Lucky wasn't the best actor.
No. Lucky. He's a nice dog, and I can't make out what kind of dog he is. He's not an Irish setter. He doesn't look like he's a golden retriever, is he? I can't tell.
Oh, he's not a
my
golden
dog
retriever,
breeds.
no, because he's smaller than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's smaller than that. He definitely is smaller than that. But I'm wondering, they had an animal wrangler on the set, no doubt. They do that for shows. And this dog would not have been, say, in the caliber of a Lassie or even a Benji. Not a dog that had any kind of name recognition. They got a generic dog that probably was on contract with Filmation and other studios to be used in different episodic television. They kept these acting dogs and other animals very busy in Hollywood. And using animals in productions is very serious business. And there are animal wranglers who have full-time jobs doing nothing but prepping and caring for animals as they go onto the sets of movies and television. And so this is certainly nothing new in this episode of using an animal. Animals and kids are some of the hardest co-actors to work with, they'll tell you. But this dog appears to be just fine. He appears to be cooperating, except he's not supposed to. He's supposed to look dead. He can't play dead, John. That's the
thing. That's what I'm saying. He's not a good actor.
Yeah, not a good actor.
Yeah. So we cut back to later on. Rick and Andrea are waiting back at the school for the news, and the call comes in.
I'll get it. Chem Lab, Miss Thomas. Yes, Dr. Rogers. I see. Yes, I'll tell him. Okay. Thank you for calling, Dr. Rogers.
Lucky.
I really wish I didn't have to do this.
Andrea, do you want me to go with you?
No, I'll tell him. I just don't know how he's going to take it.
It's a lie!
I'm sorry. Very sorry.
He got away, didn't he? He got away from the hospital, and Dr. Rogers just saying he died.
Randy, listen to me. Lucky didn't run away. He died.
He did not! He didn't! Randy, wait!
It's heartbreaking because you could just see, even there, Joanna Cameron just looks like she's going to cry. You almost wonder, because I know there's stories of like MASH where they didn't reveal that Henry Blake's copter didn't make it to its destination. It was shot down and Henry died. They never told the cast that so they could get a natural reaction. You almost wonder if they kind of like left that there for her, because her reaction just seems so genuine when she finds out.
I'm thinking about this, that really Joanna Cameron had incredible range as an actress.
Yeah.
And she does an excellent job here, probably better here than in any other episode of The Secrets of Isis. I think she's a terrific actress, and she did a terrific job with the actors' choices and digging in deep and pulling out something very sad and very dark to sell the scene to our viewing audience. And they do train you in acting school how to do this.
Yeah.
And it's really a shame that Joanna Cameron, she did have an acting career. She was in a number of movies and television shows. But it's a shame that her acting career did not flourish to the extent that so many other well-known actresses of the 70s had, because she had tremendous range, and I think that she displays her range so well in this episode of The Secrets of Isis. She does a terrific job that we'll never see her do this quite again.
It's so funny, too, because she certainly was well-known enough. I mean, we've talked about how Isis might have worked better as a primetime show, and yet she was a recognizable name enough, because I still remember when the Spider-Man movie, the second one I think it was, that she appeared in, was being advertised by CBS. One of the big things they were doing was with guest star Joanna Cameron. It was like huge.
Yes.
Premiering Wednesday, The Amazing Spider-Man. Nicholas Hammond and guest Joanna Cameron, star of Isis, race to locate a deadly plutonium bomb and the ruthless Mr. White, who would destroy the world. Don't miss The Amazing Spider-Man. Wednesday at 8, 7 Central and Mountain.
Next Wednesday on CBS.
Well, I think that her name recognition at the time was from ISIS.
Right.
And I think that the producers of that Spider-Man episode you're speaking of with Nicholas Hammond, I think that they knew their target audience were superhero comic book readers.
True.
And I think that that's what sold it. I remember watching, I knew that was Joanna Cameron from ISIS. I knew that. But she was in other films long before she did ISIS. She was in a film by Gene Roddenberry called Pretty Maids All in a Row with Rock Hudson.
Roger Vadim, the French director who uncovered Bardot, now presents his tribute to the high school girls of America. Oceanfront High is a model school with an enthusiastic faculty, a responsive student body, and real team spirit. Too bad about the dead cheerleader in the second floor, John.
Mr. Papa!
Was she raped, Captain?
You caught me.
And I understand that you've turned down a couple of offers at Teachers University?
Because I believe this is, as they say, where it's at.
I really want you. Well, now, if we started doing that with our students, who knows where it would lead?
Well, we'd certainly get to know them better.
But some teachers might do it for pleasure.
Yes, I suppose there could be some whistling while we work.
Hans, are you undressing me?
Oh, no, Miss Smith. I must have accidentally.
Hans, don't hurt me.
On the football field?
Oh, dynamite.
Has anyone made any unnatural sexual overtures to you?
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, God. Ow.
Hi, Coach.
John, how are you?
Fine. And you?
Say, John, would you mind turning off that light?
Smith, substitute teacher. Is there anything at all I can do for you?
All right, everybody stop trampling on the evidence.
Hi, Tiger. My little sweet shortcake snack.
Pretty maids.
And that was somewhat of a little risque of a motion picture. It's kind of on the adult side. But Joanna Cameron has a small role in that picture. And she wanted to make it as an actress and make it big in Hollywood like all actresses do. I think she was a terrific actress. It wasn't the fact only that she was easy on the eyes and was an attractive woman. She was a good actress who had a tremendous amount of range. And it is too bad that she was not given the opportunities to stretch that range and play a wide variety of roles on the screen that she should have been given, I believe.
Well, I mean, like we said, this scene here alone, I mean, when she goes to give Randy the news and he doesn't take it well, I mean, it's heartbreaking and it's very daring for either series to do.
Yes, you're right. It's a very daring scene because it's an emotional scene. It's something that everybody can relate to, the loss of a pet and tragic news like this, and that she feels for Randy. And Randy, he's a good actor, too. He sells the audience that he's really mourning over his pet. He does a very good job. Now, they did a lot more here. I would say several steps beyond what they did in the Star Trek episode, the animated series the year before with Mr. Spock, because they teach death on that show. They teach about the death and cycle of life and all of that too. But the character of Mr. Spock, being a Vulcan, was not allowed to display emotion. And so here you're dealing with human beings. They're allowed to display emotion, and the reactions are very real. And Joanna Pang Atkins, who played Cindy Lee, her character is not prominent in this episode, but she liked this episode. This is one of her favorite episodes. And I think it's well done. The scene is well done. So you're right. Randy does not take this news very well, and he's walking alone. And later we see that he's walking by himself. He's getting away from it, from the shock of losing his dog.
Right.
And he's walking by a fence. He doesn't even see the sign that says "Danger, no admittance," and "Special project, no admittance." And that's a common trope in Shazam and Isis. A character will walk into a danger zone of some kind, and the camera will focus on the sign that says "Warning, keep out." We've seen this before. It's justified here because in other episodes, when characters have done that, when they've gone to a forbidden zone, there's no trespassing, danger, they're doing it out of recklessness. Here, Randy is going on to this forbidden area not out of recklessness or thoughtlessness. He is in such grief that he's not able to pay attention to any warning signs. And he's about to walk into some dangerous situation that could cause his life or his safety. So he's walking away. And he sees the other boy, Glenn. What's he doing there?
Yeah.
What's he doing there? He's not in grief very much. I mean, he's walking with his dog, right? And he's walking where it's clearly forbidden to trespass. He walked by that sign to ignore it. Randy has an excuse. This Glenn idiot doesn't. And he goes, oh, dear. So Glenn sees Randy. He tells him he's sorry. And Randy continues to walk away. And Glenn warns him that he can't go up there because someone is testing water pressure there. Randy says he doesn't care and walks away. Now, this probably does shift Randy's character a little bit, John, because he had an excuse to walk by that sign that says, danger, keep out, testing going on. Now he's made aware that there is something going on, and then he makes a conscious decision to say, I don't care. So now he no longer has the excuse. Yeah. So Glenn walks out of there. He's no longer trespassing, and Randy goes off on his own way.
Yeah. But we can clearly see now, if we didn't get it before, that this whole area here with the testing and everything that's going on and the danger, it's because it's a dam. And Randy is walking right along it. They're absentmindedly playing with Lucky's leash, tossing it up and down so that he drops it over the side. So he goes down to retrieve it, and in the process manages to get himself hurt. I gotta ask, how? I didn't understand this.
Well, how does he get himself conveniently hurt?
Yeah.
He's around a bunch of rocks. Yeah, maybe he caught his whole leg in between the rocks. Again, a common trope of getting your leg caught in rocks that we've seen before.
It's just badly played.
It's badly played. They could have thrown something in the script that said, "Ow, my leg! I can't feel it," or something. If they would have said that, that would have given the audience a clue as he hurt himself. Instead, he just says, "Ow, I'm hurt." Whatever.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, we see Cindy going after Andrea Thomas and asks where Randy went. She says that his mother is worried about him. Now, again, these are the days before cell phones and smartphones. We wouldn't have this problem today, probably. But Cindy wonders where he is, and Andrea says, "Well, where did he and Lucky go?" Andrea asked Cindy Lee this. Again, reinforcing what I said earlier in this podcast. Cindy seems to know every place where every guest character of the week goes off to. And her response is, ta-da, he used to go running near the dam, but it's closed off now. Oh, gosh. Whenever you have a missing persons report, the police, all they need to do is call Cindy Lee. I'm going to give Joanna Peng Atkins' contact information out to every law enforcement person in the country, because if you have a missing person, call her. She knows where they're at. Oh, Joanna, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to give out your contact information. But this is a common trope with the Secrets of ISIS.
Yeah.
Cindy Lee, in this first season, knows where everybody is.
Almighty ISIS. Those ever winds which blow on high, lift me now so I can fly.
Why doesn't ISIS, or Andrea, just become ISIS, look into her amulet and figure out the answer herself? That's what I don't understand.
Well, it's interesting you say that. And here's the thing. Again, we're going to see ISIS resolve a situation without using magic, because she makes her way across the rocks and frees Randy using leverage from a tree limb. No magic.
No magic.
Yeah.
I think that probably is done in this episode, because if she did use magic in this episode, then kids would have said, well, why couldn't you have saved the dog with one of those chanting rhymes?
Yeah.
That would have taken away from the impact of the episode that magic can't solve death.
Magic can't solve death, but that's the thing. Hang on, though, because then as they turn to leave...
ISIS is here! I can't move!
Randy turns around to go back and get the leash because he still hadn't picked it up. And finally, we do get some blue screen magic because ISIS stops the release of the water from the dam. So, and I think if I remember correctly, Randy even actually points out, like, you were able to stop this, or, why couldn't you save Lucky? Right. And this is where it gets real deep.
Then why'd he have to die?
It was time.
Couldn't you save him?
No.
But you have all the powers.
Not all.
You saved him before.
I pulled him from the ocean. No one has the power of life and death. You see, Randy, there's a cycle of life. For Lucky, for all of us, for every living thing, there's a time to live and a time to die. Do you see that flower?
No. I'll show it to you.
Because ISIS explains the circle of life and how we're all gonna die. I mean, it's beautifully done with the flower, but yikes.
Look at me, Randy. How lovely it is. We'd like it to last forever, but that can't be. That phase of its life is ending, an ending and a beginning.
It's dead.
But its life is not over. Seeds fall. Some provide food for birds and animals and become part of another life. Some bury themselves deep into the soil. Then wind comes, carrying the petals, and they nourish the earth. Then rains and snow. We can't see the life, but it's there, waiting for its time. Then sun, warming the earth. And now look, a new flower grows, and the cycle of life is complete. And death is part of it. Lucky's death is like that.
He isn't coming back.
No, but remember, life has passed on.
I'm sure gonna miss him.
I know, everyone will, especially the team.
They don't need him.
Maybe not. They sure were counting on him. You know, I'll bet they're getting ready for that big game right now. Kinda nice if you went over.
Nah, I'm not on the team, you know. I just went along to hold Lucky's leash. I couldn't go.
It's your decision, but think it over. They sure could use your support.
That's true, and it has to be realistic at some point, because they're trying to tell kids using, in essence, a modern version of a fairy tale with a superheroine that can do impossible things, that we're all mortal beings and every living thing must die.
Yeah.
And again, if this were real life, okay, if this were real life, of course it's not. If it were, I would have those kinds of questions. Why couldn't she just go back in time and spin around the world a few times like Christopher Reeve could and prevent things from happening?
Yeah.
You know, and that's where the problem comes up with fantasy, science fiction, superhero stuff, where you have a hero that can do too much and doesn't have any weaknesses, then you would have no problems in life. In a more extended way, as Isis is explaining the circle of life and things like getting very down to earth and realistic about things, modern superhero movies tend to deal with this in a more catastrophic way, because modern superhero movies show incredible beings with superpowers, but the collateral damage they leave behind, resulting in the deaths of thousands of people, have the world and the governments in those fictional universes saying, we need to put a stop to these superheroes. They're killing us. So they have powers that preserve their self-interest, but they're causing death and destruction that they cannot reverse themselves. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange form of a morality tale now.
Yeah. This whole thing, I mean, like, I even now, I mean, knowing it and seeing it, it's still a gut punch. I still walk away still feeling, a little sad over it. I mean, yeah, there's hope at the end when we get to the very end.
Yeah, there's hope, but, screw hope. Here, we're seeing death. Okay? Like, all the hope in the world can't take away the pain of losing something, all right? And you got this powerful superhero who can do all this stuff, and she can't bring the dog back. It's a nice explanation, the circle of life and all of that, but yeah, come on, you can fly, lady, okay? You can stop forest fires, all right?
Yeah.
There are things that are just, and you can travel in time. Let's not forget, superheroes can travel in time to prevent all these evils from happening.
Right.
So it's a realistic explanation that does express to kids and to adults that death is inevitable for all living things. That's just a law of biogenesis here, and a law of thermodynamics. If you want to get technical about it, all living things have to die, and that's the moral that the writers and the producers are trying to tell us. But it's less convincing, John, coming from a superhero trying to tell us these things, when you have faith in that superhero to be like a goddess or something like that, who's capable of doing just about anything.
Well, she is a goddess.
Yeah.
She's ISIS.
She's not going to. she's Isis, and she's not going to perform the Lazarus stunt,
Right.
Which I thought that would have been cool. Have a zombie dog come out. That would have been awesome, John.
Oh, Lord.
The return of Lucky. Leave it up to Richard, co-host of the podcast, to take a sentimental, serious story and make fun of it somehow. Well, I'm not really making fun. I'm just saying that you have a superhero who's supposed to convey a serious message, and Joanna Cameron does an excellent job of that. They're not taking away from that. She does a good job.
Yeah.
But it's the medium of a superhero trying to tell that to anybody that's difficult to believe, because we put superheroes up on these pedestals to think that they can do anything. But either they can't do something, or when they do something to put a stop to evil, they cause damage and destruction whenever they fight it out or duke it out with somebody.
Right. Yeah. So how does this all wrap up?
Well, in the very next scene, Isis suggests that he goes to the ball game and support the team, and then we see Mr. Mason playing catch, wearing a tie. I mean, oh gosh, I wouldn't dress up when playing catch. Okay, that's just not cool. But and he asks Randy if he wants to watch the game. He's not in the mood. The other team brings him a new dog. Well, that's awful nice for them to do that. Miss Thomas says it looks like Lucky. No, he don't. Okay, no. That's a cute puppy dog. He don't look like Lucky at all. Now, and Miss Thomas throws a ball. The puppy hasn't learned to play fetch yet. Now, I think one little thing that's not really addressed here, and I think it's a nice touch, that it's the other team that brings him the dog, right?
Yeah.
The other team, the teammate, I think it's Glenn, is responsible for killing Lucky.
Right. Yeah.
In the first place. And his attitude is not genuinely remorseful enough. It's like, my God, I'm sorry, I killed your dog, it's all my fault. I will do anything to make this up to you, anything. And they had an opportunity to do that and didn't do it, because the writer is focused on trying to communicate to the audience that death is a part of life and all of that nice sentimental business. But the character of Glenn is hanging out there, who's not taking any responsibility for offing this poor kid's dog. Oh, jeez.
I don't know. All right, let's talk about the stunts for a moment. I honestly, for the first time in a while, there are some genuine stunts, whether it's Isis swimming in that churning water or her making her way across the rocks in heels. You got to give them that. Those are some genuine stunts.
Yes, and she wore those high heels again. She did stunts like this before, and really for an actress, it's somewhat dangerous to let your main actor go out and do something like this.
Yep.
And we may watch it passively and think, oh, that's not dangerous. Yeah, it is. It's very dangerous to be wearing a costume like that and walk on sharp rocks, and to going into churning water, like you said. That is not. That is rather dangerous.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that she may have wanted to be adventurous and want to do that. That's kind of risky. I think that she did a good job doing that. So I would consider those things to be stunts, in my view.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And the fashion-wise, I've got to admit, I did like Andrea's beach outfit, but I say it again, I was hoping to see someone in a bathing suit, perv that I am.
Hey, look. I saw Joanna Cameron wear that bikini in that episode of Spider-Man you brought up with Hammond. Yeah. When I looked at that, I'm going, oh, mighty Isis.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, oh, dear. My jaw was on the floor. I'm going, why couldn't she have worn that on Saturday morning?
Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I don't think she's wearing a bikini when she's working on Rick's boat either, is she?
No, she's not.
No.
Oh, darn. Well, hey, there's always fan fiction.
There you go.
Let's move on.
Yes.
We will return to ISIS after these messages.
In the news, helping young people with their health problems. This healthcare center on Long Island specializes in treating and counseling young people. This special kind of healthcare is in the news.
Sponsored by Kellogg's, because your best day starts with breakfast.
Lego my new Eggo strawberry flavored waffle.
Lego, your what?
Lego my new Eggo strawberry flavored waffle.
Did you say strawberry?
Uh-huh.
No, you didn't say Lego my Eggo regular waffle. Or my Eggo blueberry waffle, did you?
Uh-uh.
Oh, delicious Eggo waffles, just like homemade with that great strawberry taste.
Did you say strawberry?
Lego my Eggo.
Start your good breakfast with new Eggo strawberry waffles and regular or blueberry flavor, too.
From Kellogg's.
Young people between the ages of 12 and 19 have outgrown their pediatricians, but they often have special health problems. Now, some medical experts believe adolescents need doctors specially trained to treat their problems. On Long Island in New York, medical specialists have set up a healthcare center that is only for young people. Although the atmosphere is informal, the medical care is first-rate. Joyce Ann Shapiro is a typical patient. She has been a diabetic for 9 years. After her doctor takes her medical history and tests her, she is given some advice. She's told to watch her diet and restrict the amount of sugar she eats. After that, she talks to the clinic's psychologist. Young people often feel they are alone with their problems. But when they come to a clinic like this one, they see others with similar problems.
Instead of going to a regular doctor, he has from like little kids to teenagers. Right here, they have just adolescents. And like, I think after all adolescents, they know what like everybody's about. Everybody around here is like really friendly. You get to talk and meet new people.
Once a week, the entire team meets to discuss certain patients, their treatment, and their progress.
At which time we decided...
There are only about 100 clinics like this one throughout the United States, but more and more doctors are realizing the need for this kind of care. Medical care for young people is in the news.
Easy Does It with Frankie Avalon. Lots of music and laughter. Easy Does It, new this summer.
Premiering Wednesday night on CBS. And now, back to ISIS.
Losing something we love is never easy, but it's a part of growing up. And growing up doesn't just mean getting bigger and older. It means learning and understanding about life. The cycle of life is all around us. If you look, you'll see it everywhere, in flowers, animals, people. But remember, every ending is also a beginning, full of hope and promise and new life. See you next week.
We're lucky to have this moral tag, John, because most of the moral tags that were done for the Secrets of ISIS are now lost and not able to be recovered ever.
Yeah.
And we do have this one. So the question that I have is, does this particular episode hold up?
Oh, yeah. It definitely does. I mean, all joking aside, it's a very, for Saturday morning TV in the 70s, stark portrayal of death and how we all must deal with it. You know, I mean, lately we've been hearing that expression or that term, snowflakes, to describe those who can't handle changes in life. Honest to God, you know, it's funny because as we're recording this, it's the night that Debbie Reynolds passed away. Pulling back the curtain a bit, we record these in blocks, and so we've done a couple of episodes, but everybody's talking about how horrible it is. 2016 is a terrible year because so many good people, you know, that we treasure and such have died. Well, if you look at it, though, again, and taking ISIS's lesson, you know, these are folks, many of them who died. Abe Vigoda, you know, Debbie Reynolds was in her 80s. You know, God bless her. I mean, we loved her. And I'm sure, you know, her daughter's passing the day before didn't help. But these things do happen, and the fact is, if we actually went back to 2015, 2014, 2013 and counted up the number of people that we treasured as well who passed, you find it's still the same. It's just, I think, in many respects, social media has sort of magnified the grief, because if you look at your Facebook page right now in the news feed, it's all Debbie Reynolds, which has quickly replaced Carrie Fisher, which quickly replaced George Michael, I think we need more of this these days for the snowflakes of the world.
I hate to sound rude, especially on a podcast like ours, which is family oriented, but it's time to grow a pair, okay? Life is hard. Deal with it. Life is going to disappoint you. I don't like it any more than anybody else, but things have to happen. I do think that as we make this podcast, it is the year 2016, although we expect this episode of the podcast to last well into the years ahead as we preserve the memories of the secrets of ISIS and the memories of these shows that we liked as kids, that this particular year has seen a loss of a lot of celebrities. And I do think it's coincidental, but it's just that even though deaths happen all the time, that it just seems that a disproportionate number of well-known names have passed on. Now, there was some snarky comment posted on social media that, well, yeah, you don't think about the year 1665 when half the population was wiped out by the plague.
I saw that.
That was a bad year, too. And I know that's a snarky comment and rather insensitive, but the fact is that death is a part of life, and we have coping mechanisms to deal with it. Everything from grief to sick humor.
Yeah.
And that's a form of trying to deal with something that's very serious and does not easily go away, and the pain does not certainly easily go away. I thought the episode here did a very good job of dealing with it, and especially communicating that to children. And I thought it was more effective and more emotional than what we saw, again, in the previous year's Star Trek The Animated Series episode dealing with death.
Okay, then, but with all that said, on a scale of 1 to 5 tuts, how do you rate Lucky?
Well, I was only going to give this 3 out of 5 tuts initially. I was. But I have to give it a little higher rating now because I do think it was well done. I thought the acting, especially the camaraderie and the chemistry between this child actor and Joanna Cameron, was pitch perfect. I thought that scene was pitch perfect. It is tough to act as a mature adult with a kid. It's tough to do it. That is not easy work, and the kid did a terrific job. I got to bolster it up to 4 out of 5 tuts rather than 3. I thought of 3 because it's average in some respects. It's a moral of the week. It's a decent story, briefly told, and the danger of the kid going near the dam is a bit too contrived to try to put the kid in danger so ISIS has an excuse to show up on the scene to rescue him. But yeah, it's a good episode. I can't consider it outstanding. It's not the shining star of all the episodes of The Secrets of ISIS, but yes, it's very good.
Okay. I have to say I'm not changing mine. I was there from the beginning. I'm going 5 out of 5. I mean, to me, because of the performances, because of the willingness to tackle such a topic and doing it as well as they did. Are there moments of contrivance? Yeah, sure. I mean, the whole thing with him dropping the leash over the side of the dam and all. And again, I'm not entirely convinced how he got himself hurt on the rocks. But to me, those are minor points compared to overall this well-crafted, well-acted story. And to me, it's probably, if not one of the best of the series overall, then definitely one of the best of the season. I think that's the better way to put it. But I would rank it up there as one of my favorites of the entire series.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would consider this maybe not the best of the series.
Not the best. No,
not the best.
But one of the best.
Up there. Yes, it's one of the best. It really is. It is one of the best of the first season before there was a cast change in the second season.
Right.
It's one of the best, and it conveys a strong moral. We'll have to go through the other episodes of the seasons, the Secrets of ISIS, to see how well they are, because I haven't gotten to all of them yet personally, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to measure this one a little lesser or a little more than what we're going to see, or if I'm going to really think less of the episodes we have yet to see, because I know there's going to be some new things coming along in future episodes that may not be as dark and as serious as this, and other episodes are going to be pure escapism with no grounding in reality at all.
Right. Yeah. Now, speaking of that, we might have an episode like that where there's no reality, it seems, because while on a picnic in our next episode, Cindy and and Lee. Now, this was weird. I also thought that they named a character Lee when you've got Cindy Lee, so they would refer to Cindy and Lee, and it was just awkward the way it sounded. But Cindy and Lee spot a figure moving through the trees. Could it be Bigfoot? Now, long before Steve Austin discovered the secret of Bigfoot, ISIS was on the job and brings us the answers in our next review as we continue with the first season of ISIS. So, until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Richard, take care, everybody.
Take care and continue tuning in to our podcast. We will have new exciting episodes ahead.